Okay, so it's 2000 hours Central European time, and hello, good friends all over the world. Welcome to this 20-year anniversary celebration for UN Global Compact, and welcome to this session hosted by the UN Global Compact Action Platform for Sustainable Ocean Business. As you can see, we have an amazing lineup of experts for our sessions today. Just briefly, for those of you who are not familiar with the Action Platform, it's a collection of 30 plus actors leading companies in the ocean space, shipping, offshore, fish farming, fisheries, seabed mining, and also ocean-related services like finance, equipment producers, insurance, institutional investors. We have the most prominent UN specialized agencies from the regulator side. We have some of the most prominent science communities in the world. We have World Wildlife Fund, World Bank, and also we are enjoying the support of the governments of Portugal and Norway. And for all that, we are very, very pleased. When the COVID struck, we immediately asked ourselves, is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that we can do to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 or to exploit the opportunities arising from this situation? Bearing in mind that this is an action platform not only working with the SDG 14, which is life below water, but all the 17 SDGs. We have to both protect better the ocean, and we have to tap the opportunities that it offers for the future that we want. And in this, for that purpose, the task force COVID-19 was created. And in this session, we are to delve into the topics that we have discussed in these short sprints, which are 3 meetings in 3 weeks, trying to tap the best of these phenomenal brains. And for today's session, in the first session, we are to discuss the ocean supply chains, which are now under imminent and urgent pressure. We are to address industry, science, cooperation, and the potential in that space. And in the last and third section, we are to take the meta perspective, the top-down perspective, and see how new ways of collaboration has been driven by this unprecedented situation. So we have a great set of panel discussions to look forward to. But before that, it's a great pleasure for me to invite the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, to give a taped introductory remark. And then I would also ask the panelists to unscreen yourself. Thank you.
In 2018, by adopting the Commonwealth Blue Charter, and in accordance with our shared values and principles, Commonwealth countries pledged to work together to address ocean challenges. Collectively, Commonwealth countries have responsibility for 1/3 of the ocean under national jurisdiction. This presents challenges and offers opportunities which are best addressed through cooperation and mutual support. Similarly, the COVID-19 challenges currently facing our maritime businesses, from stranded shipping to cancelled tourism and struggling fisheries, cannot be solved by one nation or region, nor by one sector. We knew it already, but the pandemic has underlined for us the vital need to take decisive, joined up, cooperative, multilateral action. That is not how we are at present addressing ocean governance. Perhaps our Commonwealth approach offers a way forward. Under the Commonwealth Blue Charter, membership of our action groups is voluntary. Therefore, only those countries which recognise the severity of a problem join up, allowing for 100% political will to be turned to the issue at hand. And all Commonwealth countries agreed the Commonwealth Blue Charter, with 41 countries to date participating in one or more action groups. So it is encouraging and promising that the Global Compact, too, is a voluntary association of businesses which share a principled and common understanding of the long-term advantages, indeed the necessity of sustainability. Although already 20 years old, it is still very timely. The suffering being experienced right now across the world must be heeded. From this crisis, from which we will undoubtedly emerge, there are hard lessons to learn, which cannot be disregarded. We owe it to those who are no longer with us to take forward actions which serve us all, which feed us all, which clothe and shelter us all. Solutions that rebuild differently, such that we can begin to live within the sustainable resources of this planet's fragile ecosystems. Life first emerged from the ocean. Mass extinctions have happened before in the geological past, and one is happening again right now. The only difference is that this is the first time that a species has been conscious of it, indeed is largely responsible for it. This amazing species could, with determination and coordination, still halt it. Yet humankind, which has crafted so many ways to communicate at any time of day or night across the 7 seas, is still not cooperating adequately or on the necessary global scale. Fortunately, it is not yet too late. So let us rally and mobilize more broadly and inclusively as we are here today, engaging shipping, aquaculture, science, and all stakeholders as we begin to take the first tentative steps after lockdown out into a changed world. Let us prepare for a future where sustaining humankind and sustaining our precious planet home go hand in hand, as they surely should and must.
So thank you very much, Secretary General, for those excellent introductory remarks and very important remarks indeed. The Commonwealth Blue Charter is an extremely important document bringing together countries to deal with and tackle the challenges of the borderless ocean. So thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Heike Degim and Guy Platten to join the screen. That's Guy. And there is Heike. Can you, Matt, if you hear me, can you please unscreen yourself and unmute yourself? If you press leave on your screen now, so up on the right-hand side, you leave the screen, but not the session. There we are. Thank you. Great. Okay, thank you. Just to provide a bit of context to this this session, which is really addressing an imminent, pressing, and very, very urgent problem, which has moved from being sort of a challenge of logistics into becoming what is now a humanitarian crisis at sea. And just for the context of it, the ocean supply chains, they are about the logistics at sea. More than 80% of all international trade of goods by volume are carried by ships. Also, shipping operations are vital.
We lost him.
I think we've lost him.
That's not good.
Yeah, well, at least we can speak to each other, Heike.
Sorry, everyone. We'll be with you shortly. We're just having some slight technical issues.
That's okay.
Thank you, guys.
Someone's put in the chat, but good internet is a global problem. That's true.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
we can hear you, Stella.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can. Yeah.
Good. Okay, some technical problems, obviously. Okay, where did you lose me? I guess I managed to introduce you both, did I?
No, you were just starting.
Okay, so I'll take it from the start then. Okay, guys, we'll start this over again. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Heike Degem, Safety Director of IMO, the UN specialized agency, regulator, and responsible for the for safety regulations, security regulations, and environmental performance of vessels. So thank you so much for being with us today, Heike. And Guy Platten, Secretary General of the International Chamber of Shipping, the principal trade association for the shipping industry. I believe you are sort of representing like 80% of the world merchant fleet, and also the lion's share, I guess, of the offshore supply fleet in the world. So, just a very few words of backdrop. The ocean supply chains, what do you mean by that? Well, we mean the logistics of moving goods. Shipping is moving 80% plus all international trade of goods between countries measured by volume. Also, ocean operations are vital to providing energy, food, fuel, feeds, minerals, medicines, etc. And when the COVID struck and the borders were closed and traveling curtailed, ports were partially reduced capacity, airplanes were grounded, and that created a huge logistical challenge when it comes to changeover of key personnel, seafarers. And if I'm right, Guy and Heike, as of today, we're talking about 200,000 plus seafarers stranded at sea, and the equivalent number, of course, stranded at home, who should replace these. And then there has been an emergency extension of labor contract expiring tomorrow. So that's the backdrop of this. And I'll turn to you first, Guy Platten. What is your take on this situation?
Thanks, Stella, and thanks for the opportunity to speaking to you all this evening or this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are in the world. I think sustainability is vital for any industry, and indeed nation, and nothing can be more important for an industry like shipping, which is exposed to every element, be that climate or economic. But it's clear that the COVID pandemic will impact the delivery of these sustainable development goals, and we are committed to make sure that impact is minimal. Likewise, we want to see agreement at IMO about emission reduction goals to enable industry to act effectively. We see this as the fourth propulsion revolution for the industry, and we need to get this right. But COVID-19, as you in your introduction, has created an equally urgent challenge. And at this very moment, 1.2 million seafarers are on over 55,000 ships across the world, ensuring that the global supply chains remain open and countries are kept supplied with the food, the fuel, the raw materials and goods that we all rely upon in every day of our lives, including the vital supply of medical equipment. This fragile supply chain in global trade is now a threat due to government action about our seafarers, because seafarers are trapped on board ships, isolated from COVID-19, but it's also isolated them from their family and friends. We know of weddings being missed, we know of births being missed, we know of funerals of close friends and relatives to these seafarers being missed as well. And every month, 200,000 seafarers usually alternate 100,000 off and 100,000 on to make sure that global supply chain is intact. But because of the COVID-19, because of a lack of political imperative for seafarers, we've meant that 200,000 seafarers are trapped on board ships now, and 200,000 are waiting to relieve them. And if we carry on, the supply chains are a critical risk if we go forward on this basis. Our seafarers have gone the extra mile. They've extended their tours of duty and have kept working to keep us all supplied. We've done a huge amount of homework. We work very closely with the IMO, been absolutely amazing throughout this whole of this crisis to put in place protocols and guidelines to keep our seafarers safe and to get them from home to the ship and back again. But what we need now is government to take action, to work with us, to prioritise seafarers as essential workers and help us to make sure we can get the seafarers on board ships home again and get those stuck ashore back on board the ships to keep the supply chains running. So that's, it's, if we don't do these things, there are serious risks coming down the street, coming towards us now.
Thank you, Guy, for that very passionate intervention. And Heike, I pass the word to you, your take from the side of the IMO, because you're representing the member governments. So that's where the solution, in a sense, lies, isn't it?
Yes, we are the shipping regulator. Shipping is an international business, global, and of course, any solutions that are applied need to be also global. That's in the nature of things. We have started addressing the consequences of the pandemic basically from the beginning, when it all started to become difficult in March of this year. And it also became pretty much clear very early on that the problem was the seafarers, crew change, repatriation, all the issues that Guy just mentioned. So we tried to gear our guidance that we have in that direction. We started off with appeals to governments to designate seafarers and marine personnel in general as key workers that would be exempted from the many restrictions that many countries apply as a consequence of the pandemic. And many of our member governments live up to the expectations and have actually done what they can to facilitate the exchange of crews both ways, off the ships and on the ships. But we have, unfortunately, many other governments that put their national interests before the global interest and are dragging their feet and making it really difficult for shipping companies to exchange their crews. The key date here, as you already mentioned, Sturla, is tomorrow. Basically, the contracts have been extended as far as possible until today. And it remains to be seen what will happen tomorrow when the 16th of June, the crucial date, arrives. Yeah, without coordinated global action, there is not much we can do. The global flow of maritime transport is now jeopardized. We will see what actions also the seafarers unions are taking to address the issue. It just cannot continue as it is now. It has become too hard.
If I may ask, at some point, I guess, one are exceeding the time limits. So from a regulatory perspective, there will be in violation of rules, and I guess that many are already. Is it one way of saying that, or could, for instance, the private sector here, insurance companies, say that, okay, you're in violation with the IMO rules, so as of tomorrow, you're uninsured if you continue operations. Is that sort of a scenario which can play out? Or can you, from the IMO side, say that, no, as of tomorrow, you just have to stop sailing because of crew fatigue, or it's a humanitarian and safety issue?
It is true that it has become a safety issue because people are just too long on board. They are fatigued, they are desperate, and that has, of course, an influence on the safety of the ship. We are the international regulator. We are not implementing the regulations. That's a matter for governments to do. So we can only, that's the problem, we can only appeal to them to do something and to make it obvious that something needs to be done. But it's up to them to take action.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I guess that here it's not, it doesn't suffice with sort of ad hoc case-by-case solutions between some countries and some shipping companies, because we're talking about a fairly massive logistical operation with 400,000 crews imminently needing needing changeover. Is that so, Guy?
Yeah, it is. It's 200,000 are stuck on board the ships now, and it's. I think what the frustration is that with political will, this could be solved very quickly. The industry is not after money. We want, that's not the issue. It's about freeing up the bureaucratic logjams which exist now. It's about prioritising seafarers as essential workers because they are, and allowing them to perhaps overcome some of the travel restrictions that are put in place for maybe the general population, because these are key workers. We need to get them from the ships to home, and it can't go on. This is not a sustainable position. The seafarers have done an amazing job, and I'm an ex-seafarer, and I can remember having my trip extended once and how that felt. But some of them have been extended time and time again now, and we can't expect that goodwill to carry on indefinitely. And the agreements run out, as you said, now. So who knows what's going to happen in the next few days? Ships will have to be, they need to be manned safely, they need to comply with the regulations, and ship owners will always do that. They will always look after the safety first. But we need governments to take action now. We need them to pay attention to us as an industry. And these unsung heroes, they're out of sight, out of mind. We need to prioritise them now. And work with us, work with the industry, work with the regulator to get this logjam eased and get some of those seafarers home back to their families, and get the ones who are desperate to come and work on board the ships now to relieve them out to the ships.
So I wanted, we're running out of time for this section of the discussion. But I want to thank you both also for participating in the task force that produced also a set of 14 recommendations, which were delivered to the UN Secretary General and to the President of the UN General Assembly. And only yesterday, the UN Secretary General, as you alluded to, Heike, issued an appeal to countries to come together and resolve this situation. So. Thank you so much. We'll cross fingers and see what happens after tomorrow. But this is certainly something which needs imminently to be resolved. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And then I will, if you now leave the screen, Guy and Heike, and I will invite Hiroko Muraki Gottlieb, Thomas Peacock, Robert Blasiak, and Matthew Slater. There is Hiroko. Hello. Hi. There is Robert.
Hello.
Hi, Robert. Thomas is on.
Hello.
Hi. I guess that Matthew is just around the corner.
Hi.
This looks very promising. Can you all hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay, what I'll do now is sort of out of what is very polite, but I'll ask you a surprise quiz. Now, raise your hands if you know the answer. Kathy Sullivan. Does that ring a bell? No? Okay. I'm not surprised because I didn't know that name until a few days ago. But
oh, I think I know.
Yeah. Matt?
It's not the woman who suggested that climate change was happening 200 years before all other people did, or 150 years before? No,
not exactly.
Okay, sorry.
No. But a very good try. Okay, Kathy Sullivan, 3 days ago, became the first woman to descend down to the Challenger Deep of the Mariana Trench, the deepest spot on Earth. But not only that, she's a former astronaut. So she's the first human being, both being in space and at the deepest spot on Earth. So we took a woman, of course it did. The reason why I say this is, of course, that of the paradox that we know more about the surface of the planets surrounding us than of the seabed on our own planet. But not only sort of high resolution bathymetrics is a challenge. We also have a huge untapped potential of knowledge about the ocean, the life in the ocean. And this is, of course, why this has been designated the Decade of Ocean Science by the UN. And I'd like to turn to you, Hiroko. You are ocean representative at the International Council for Environmental Law. You're also associate at the Evolutionary Biology Department of Harvard University. And not only that, you have also been very helpful in producing the joint UNESCO IOC UN Global Compact business brief on how science and industry can work together through this decade. So please, Hiroko, maybe you could explain us what is in this brief and sort of your take on this field.
Well, thank you very much, Sturla. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge Professor Peter Gerges of Harvard University and Hunter Hathaway of University of Washington. They contributed significantly to the business brief, and I thank them for their contributions. Maybe I should start with the Decade of Ocean Science. So it's going to launch next year, and it will focus on the 7 outcomes, including a clean ocean, healthy and resilient ocean, productive ocean, and so forth. And the 7 outcomes and the Ocean Action Platform's 5 tipping points are closely aligned. So I think that's the reason why the partnership really works. And UN Global Compact Sustainable Ocean Principles can guide actions of business. And so for that reason, I view the business brief as a companion piece to the Global Compact's Ocean Stewardship 2030 report. And the decade is unique because it's a framework to harness, stimulate, and coordinate interdisciplinary efforts among all stakeholders at all levels. So it supports a really diverse way to deliver fit-for-purpose knowledge, actions, and, of course, solutions. And it will mobilize resources, including investments and technological innovation in ocean science. And by design, it is a participative and transformative process. And it does include creating opportunities for sustainable businesses to thrive. So this brief is an invitation to the private sector to engage in the decade as active partners. And of course, the private sector is a key stakeholder because it has the expertise, the experience, the presence, and the capacity, and the resources to lead and develop a robust and resilient blue economy. And there are numerous opportunities presented by the decade that are specific to the private sector. So for example, better ocean science is expected to provide numerous benefits, such as opportunities to explore new markets, improve business models, And second, active participation in the decade can bring unique benefits to individual participating business, such as promotion of companies' activities and access to global network of like-minded ocean leaders. And the business brief also informs various ways that the business can engage in the decade now, even before it launches next year, but leading up to the launch. So for example, a business can initiate or participate in co-design of a decade action or join the Decade Alliance. And all of these details are in the business brief, and they're available on oceandecade.org. And I just want to thank IOC and Global Compact on this occasion for this initiative to call on the business private sector to demonstrate their corporate purpose by developing new commitments to build the future we want. So over to you, Sturla.
Thank you very much, Hiroko, and thanks for your contributions, your invaluable contributions to this this brief, which will be a reference document for the years to come through this decade of ocean science. That is sort of the long-term perspective of it, but we also wanted to, in the first discussion panel, we looked at the imminent threats to ocean supply chains caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. But we also took the other view. Are there opportunities arising for industry, science, cooperation to deal with the more imminent opportunities of the ocean in contributing to mitigating the effects on this, or even to reap the advantages and tap the potential of the ocean? And both Hiroko has participated in that work, and also Thomas, Matt, and Robert. They have moderated each of the sessions on that. And first to you, Thomas, you are engineering professor at the MIT, and you moderated the session where we looked at how technology and data sharing can improve robustness and sustainability of the ocean economy. So please, Thomas, give us your key takeaways from those discussions.
Yes, certainly, and thank you, Sturla. Yeah, indeed, while this continues to be a trying time for the ocean, the COVID situation has highlighted considerable potential in regards to the topics of technology and data sharing. That was the focus of our panel in the sprint discussions. And there were really three key takeaways from our sprint. And again, many thanks to the diverse group of participants who participated and contributed to that. So the first takeaway really is the clear potential for using technological advancement and innovation to increase resilience and support sustainability. So for example, there are substantial global discrepancies between ports, with those that still rely on paper-based processing, facing disruptions that reverberate up the supply chain. And here, electronic port-ship interactions, remote monitoring systems for vessels, etc., can enable increasingly optimal and safer port calls. Another example that's close to my heart in the research sector, we've seen scientific cruises cancelled. They're also likely to return to operations more slowly than commercial shipping. So here, the increasing role of autonomy in making ocean measurements and increasing the role of telepresence on vessels can provide scalable solutions for gathering the ocean data and for also reducing exposure of scientists. So that was the first takeaway. The second one really is a pressing need to establish new data sharing norms between science and industry, given that a great deal of ocean data currently ends up being siloed. Key facets of this are referred to the standards, the norms, and the business models. An overarching data program is key, and the UN Decade for Ocean Science and Sustainable Development can play a pivotal role here. Such a program could be developed within the UN system, and the IOC is currently leading a new data initiative in this regard. But also collaboration and partnerships are key here. Governments can take the lead in incentivizing industry and scientists to make data available, but also public-private collaborations. Initiatives such as the Developing Ocean Data Platform can help ensure continuity, longevity, and access to data. And also, it's important that data be free of restrictions for commercial purposes. And this can be facilitated through innovative business models using methods that have been established for other industries, such as health, for example. Examples are data tagging and federated networks. And the third takeaway is that information sharing, capacity building, assisted data innovation, these are all needed to address substantial discrepancies in capabilities at international, regional, and national levels and across sectors. There is considerable potential to enhance the resilience of the blue economy and to further ocean science and innovation by leveraging synergies across scientific disciplines and among different industries. And here, again, the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development can play a key role. And one final point as well, and all this is inspired by, or came out of the COVID situation. And while COVID has impressed the urgency in regards to these points, accelerated action on all of these items will also serve us very well facing the challenges that are being posed by climate change.
Thank you, Thomas. Impressive what we were able to get out of these brief sprints. So thank you so much for that presentation. So Matt, I'm looking at you. You are head of aquaculture research at the Alfred Wegener Institute, and you were moderating this session where we looked at the resilience of aquaculture production and the aquaculture supply chain. So maybe you could give us a brief.
Absolutely, Sturla. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Aquaculture is, like many other things, heavily dependent on global supply chains. It's also, in the past 5 years, overtaken fisheries as the source of the most fish that humans consume. So that's a very important industry. From the ocean and from freshwater. What we found in aquaculture is really that the COVID was a threat, as has been so clearly explained in the previous section of this, in terms of supply chain, but it was also a kick in the pants to move in the right direction in terms of sustainability and maybe resilience within the industry. That meant that we had the opportunity to look at some of the things that go into aquaculture globally and look at the focus of aquaculture on incredibly global, highly economically efficient supply chains, and think about how they may be massaged towards something that is at least a little more resilient and a great deal more sustainable. And we were very lucky to have some great speakers who were present at the short sprint that we had. And we were able to discuss the challenges that aquaculture faces in the light of COVID, and they're increasing as supply chains come under greater strain, and to think about future science and industry collaboration, which will allow a certain amount of improvement in the sustainability and resilience of aquaculture for the blue economy. I'd like to just go through those recommendations if I can. I've tried to summarize them.
I have to give you just a couple of minutes, Matt, because we're running a bit short on time. Okay.
So our recommendations were to share and analyze existing data on sustainable and local ingredients and local raw materials, and to enable a local global balance in the supply chains for aquaculture to ensure that the food comes, but that it's more sustainable within the blue bioeconomy. We all agreed on digitization, which is very, very important, and Thomas has very well covered, and aquaculture supply chains will benefit just as much as everything else from those excellent technologies. We also talked about enabling small-scale aquaculture worldwide, and we talked about tapping into the incredible potential of extractive species, including seaweed and low-trophic animals, low-trophic species within aquaculture. And we decided that aquaculture, if it was able to focus on those particular species and its growth, would indeed become significantly more sustainable. I can leave it there, Stella.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Great. I just want to tell our audience that the conclusions from this sprint, these topics, will be presented as papers, one or separate papers. That remains to be decided, but they will be published and available for those who would like to go deeper into that. So thank you so much, Matthew. And then Robert, researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Center, also co-author of a paper on the ocean genome commissioned by the high-level panel on ocean. And you, Robert, you moderated a session on how the marine genetic resources can be used for pharmaceutical treatment. So give us your take, huh?
Right. Thank you so much, Sturla, for this opportunity. And yes, it was a really exciting session, this sprint call, because we were able to think about the ocean, which is really fascinating at every level, but at the genetic level, I think it couldn't be more fascinating. And we just have scratched the surface, and there, I'm not being hyperbolic. We've really just scratched the surface. We estimate there are around 2 million species in the ocean, and about 90% of them remain undescribed. So that's how much is unknown. At the same time, we know that about half of pharmaceuticals that are approved for clinical use come from natural products. They come from stuff that plants and animals are producing naturally. And in the ocean, there's some really interesting things being produced by the animals living here. And the success rates for drug discovery from marine natural products are about 3.5 times at the rate of terrestrial. So it's really a box waiting to be opened and discovered. And there's so much left to do. And the reason why it's so diverse is that life has existed in the ocean around 3 times as long as on land, about 3.7 billion years. Really remarkable because there's some parts of the ocean where there's no light, it's very cold there, impossible pressure. And even there's life flourishing. And the reason it can flourish there is because of all of the adaptations that have evolved over time. And that's encoded in the DNA. So there's so much left to do there. But this was just the first step to start talking about what's possible to do once you start collecting these organisms and invest in ocean science over decades and in discovery so that you're able to draw on that foundation to start looking at these compounds, even when there's some crisis like the pandemic today. And it's one thing to end on, perhaps, is that the one compound that's now approved for use in severe cases of COVID-19, remdesivir, is also one of a category of drugs that are derived from marine sponge nucleosides. So it also has some marine connection. So this is all just so much left to do, but so much potential. So it always puts a smile on my face to think about it, but at the same time, well, you have to do more, right? Boy.
Hi, everyone. I think we're having some more technical issues. Can that be the case? Yes. Okay, it can indeed. We'll just wait and see if Sturla can rejoin us shortly. If not, Robert, I would just like to ask you quickly, what were your key takeaways for next steps?
Well, a lot of what needs to happen is already happening in the short term. There's crisis. Oh, Sturla, you're back. Martha just asked me to talk about next steps, so some of the key takeaways from our sprint. So I would just sum that up very quickly, if that's okay. Oh, you're still buffering, Sturla. Okay, well, I'll stretch over a few minutes then. No, but in all seriousness, there are different levels of this. So one level is what can be done in the short term, right away. And a lot of really promising signals are happening already, that there are networks of scientists that are already sharing samples. The COVID-19 virus, it was also sequenced right away, and this was shared globally so that people were able to work right away on developing new things. There are over 100 vaccines currently in development, and that's from these soft networks of collaboration that already exist around the world. So that's the short term. But there's a much longer term perspective also that's useful, I think. And this is that the time from discovering some really interesting compound through developing a drug and bringing it to market, that can be about 20 years. And it can have an investment of up to $2 billion US. So having that sort of scale of investment and stability in the marine biodiscovery pipeline is really critical to have these new pharmaceuticals coming online when we need them. Sturla, are you online? He's still smiling at me, but not yet. Should I keep going, Martha?
Thank you very much. Just for the sake of timing, I would probably now like to invite our third panel. So if Thomas and Matt could leave the screen as such, and Robert and Hiroko, if you could stay on screen, and Rolf Tor, if you could please share your screen, that would be fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us.
Everyone.
Thank you. Excellent. So just while Sturla still buffers, Rolf Tor, thank you so much for joining us. You are the Chief Executive Officer of GARD, one of the largest maritime insurers. And what we've seen over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic are cross-sectoral groups of ocean stakeholders coming together to collaborate and try and tackle some of the challenges being faced. I was wondering if you could perhaps share some of your key takeaways on the value added that has emerged from these multi-stakeholder ocean groups.
Yes, thank you very much, Marta. I'm very happy to do so. And as a leading mutual insurer owned by the industry, our experience is that change is best done collectively. So which value is added through multi-stakeholder cooperation? I think this pandemic has revealed fundamental vulnerabilities in the global supply chain. We have to secure basic needs, as food, medical supplies, and energy. This cannot be taken for granted. And the work in this task force has demonstrated the strength of having global reaching industry organizations like International Chamber of Shipping and respected multinational authorities like the International Maritime Organization. And it has also, again, elevated the role of the seafarer, probably back to where they were historically. And certainly the recent easing of restrictions and thereby enabling more efficient crew changes in Singapore and particularly Hong Kong is a good illustration of what we are able to achieve as an industry when we do something united and together. So what key lessons can we say that we have learned? I would say that national responses often come short. And global solutions often take long time. Therefore, in my opinion, in addition to the larger multi-stakeholder collaboration, it is also important to keep in mind the smaller, more practical cross-sectoral initiatives still being a part of the solution to a wider challenge. An example of this during the COVID-19 crisis is a collaboration between GARD and the University Hospital of Bergen in Norway to develop an online web-based tool to manage COVID-19 cases on board vessels to protect the health of seafarers globally. And then I would if I can, just one other example to perspective, because the successful work to reduce oil pollution from tankers is a good illustration of how multi-stakeholder collaboration between ship owners, oil companies, classification societies, finance institutions, multilateral organizations, and governments has reduced the impact of pollution in the oceans. The quantity of oil spilled from tankers on a 10 years average was reduced by 97% over 40 years through international conventions, focus on safety, ship design, and quality. And remember, it was not done overnight. It took 40 years. So when we are still in a very early phase in the COVID-19 crisis, and it will take time to recover, and it will be tough for many. Still, strong multi-stakeholder collaboration will ease the consequences and enable opportunities in the maritime industries.
Yes, thank you very much for sharing those really insightful reflections. That's incredibly interesting. I just want to pass on now and ask you, Hiroko Muraku-Gottlieb. Now, you engage various stakeholders over the course of your career, from policy to academia. And I really want to know from you, how do you think it's now come to a point where the private sector is almost ahead of government in solving these kind of solutions? And how can policy re-engage with these private sector initiatives to make sure that we're really tackling these challenges as effectively as possible?
Well, thank you very much for that great question. And I think it comes down to a robust dialogue. It's critically important that diverse group of stakeholders are identified to ensure that no one is left behind, and then collectively come up with the questions with an eye towards solutions and engage in a serious, non-adversarial and science-based discussions. And when I say science, I am including not only natural sciences, but social sciences and traditional knowledge as well. And a major impediment sometimes is that there's lack of coordination of networks and framework, and there could be misunderstandings on false assumptions. So it's really important that dialogue happens at the very beginning, and also that it happens often. One of the things that I thought of when you said about cross-sectoral collaboration and the government is lagging behind on some of the industry initiatives is marine plastic pollution is a good example. So this is a life cycle issue, and it involves massive number of stakeholders. And it's a global problem because the ocean is interconnected. And it's a problem that disproportionately impacts the resource scarce communities. And so there are discussions about member states and regional groups working towards a global binding agreement, but it may take some time. So in the interim, there's a lot that industry initiatives are accomplishing. And these existing and new initiatives can inform the decision makers on this possible marine plastic pollution agreement, should there be one. And I think it's going to be important to really talk about what should be regulated at the global, regional, and national levels, as opposed to means to foster voluntary measures, again, with an eye towards solutions. So, and one final note is that research at all levels, from raw material procurement to product design, consumer education, and so forth, are really incredibly important, and the platform to foster partnerships to boost the needed fit-for-purpose knowledge and solutions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for those comments. And I agree, the decade of the UN Decade of Ocean Science is indeed a framework for partnerships as well as enhancing consumer awareness. Incredibly interesting. Now, I want to turn to you, Robert, as I know that you have a particular interest in multi-stakeholder collaborations and the sort of rise of informal networks in the case of a crisis. So I want you to sort of maybe take a step back and have a little think from your perspective of what you've seen of cross-industry groups or cross-sectoral groups coming together to sort of tackle the challenges that we've discussed throughout from a sort of meta perspective, if possible. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, thanks, Martha. It's a really good question. And I mean, as a scientist, I mean, the most comfortable thing for me maybe is to talk with other scientists. But then I get so inspired from listening to people like Offshore and the other members of the UN Global Compact Ocean Platform, because here we have people from the ocean-based industries where you think, oh, they must just be focused on profit. But of course they're not. They're people just like you and me, and they care about their legacy, they care about their footprint, they're interested in engaging. And that's really exciting because it means I'm coming out of my comfort zone to engage with this community. They're coming out of their comfort zone to talk with someone like me. And I find like that's a really exciting place to be working. And that's why the UN Decade and the UN Global Compact are already putting the pieces together for the next decade of focusing on ocean issues. That's really exciting and really inspiring. So I think that this is what needs to happen. Wolfto was talking about it also, that it's not just one form of collaboration. You need to have the whole menu. And once you have that, you're in better shape moving forward. And whether it's a crisis like climate change, a crisis like COVID-19, or something else that we don't know about yet, you're going to be in better shape if you have those networks and you have that sort of collaboration in place. And I find in the UN Global Compact and in this platform in particular, I've really felt that it's a very earnest and straightforward interest in building these types of collaborations. So it's been a really exciting place to be involved.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, having like-minded industries and scientists in one room can only really offer promising solutions to the challenges that we face. I want to thank you all very much for participating in this panel. I can see that we have approximately 5 minutes left, and I'm aware that Ambassador Peter Thompson is going to be leaving some closing remarks. So on that note, I'd like to thank you all for participating. And I'd like to ask you if you could possibly click the leave button at the top. And I would ask Ambassador Peter Thompson to start sharing his screen to offer his leaving remarks. So Peter Thompson, over to you. Thank you.
No, thank you. And just before I say what I'm going to say, if Guy and Heike are still there, I really want to support what they said about the fate of our seafarers and really second everything that they said. We have to think about their welfare when they've been thinking about our welfare these past few months. So, ladies and gentlemen, all courtesies observed, and greetings to everyone gathered here with us in cyberspace. Wherever and whatever your circumstances, I do hope that you and your families are safe and well during these unfamiliar times. I'd like to begin my remarks by reinforcing what the CEO of UN Global Compact, Lisa Kingo, said when she invited me to speak at this virtual summit. She said, the 20th anniversary of the UN Global Compact is an important milestone to recognize the evolving contribution of the private sector to the global sustainable development agenda and further advance ambition, innovation, and collaboration to create the world we all want. I believe it is the advancement of those three elements. End of quote, by the way. I believe it's the advancement of those three elements, ambition, innovation, and collaboration, that will get us where we want to be in 2030, living in inclusive economies and societies in a low carbon and climate resilient world. After 50 years of intense work in the fields of national and international development, I say you are going nowhere better unless you stay true to those three elements. And I affirm something that has come through strongly from today's deliberations, which is that we're all in this together. Governments and civil society can't do it on their own. The entrepreneurialism, the innovative thinking, and the relentless pragmatism of the business sector has to be intimately involved in the development and attainment of our common good interest. And ladies and gentlemen, what is our overriding common interest today? I put it to you that it is achieving a carbon neutral world by 2050. Allow me 3 minutes of your time to say why that is so. Many of you have heard me say it many times before, but I'll say it again today. Without a healthy ocean, we have a healthy planet. And at the moment, the health of the ocean is in decline. Therefore, the great task of our times is to reverse that cycle of decline. If we're not willing to take on the task, the basic truth is that we're thereby putting it upon those who are coming after us to suffer the consequences, namely escalating frequency and severity of environmental disasters with immense implications for human security. Excuse me. When it comes to the biggest cause of the decline of the ocean's health, we are unavoidably confronted by the driving force of global warming, anthropogenic greenhouse gases, the cause of ocean acidification, deoxygenation, and warming. Anthropogenic is a mighty big word, meaning originating in human activity, which in shorthand means our behavior is the cause of global warming. What are we going to do to stop this self-destructive madness? To answer that question, you have to ask another one. How are you, your community, your company, your country going to get to net zero carbon by 2050? Climate science has made it clear to us all that in order to halt climate change, we have to achieve a net zero carbon footprint, in other words, carbon neutrality within the next 30 years. We can do that by balancing our carbon emissions with carbon removal or by simply eliminating carbon emissions altogether. Succeed in that quest, and we will overcome the main cause of the ocean's declining health, thereby saving the likes of shellfish and coral and maybe even ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we all know that governments and corporations are facing extremely difficult financial decisions at this time of planning and managing the economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. And we're all aware that prolonged global economic slowdown runs the associated risk of reduced commitment to climate action. The latter cannot be allowed to occur. And only read the IPCC's reports on global warming and see in stark relief the reasons why such backward movement would be extremely detrimental to humanity's best interests. This is the time when decisions on massive financial commitments are entrained. And before the seal is set upon them, we have to ensure that the consequences of taking a low road back to the global warming, fossil fuel dependent, plastic polluting world that we knew are understood and avoided. This is the time our voices should be heard in favor of the high road to a clean green transition, a road I call the blue-green recovery road, a time when governments around the world must look beyond the short term and put in place equitable policies and investment decisions that are in harmony with a truly sustainable future. I'd like to end my remarks with a plug for the postponed UN Ocean Conference that will be held in Lisbon on dates to be advised as soon as we are able to do so. In virtual or actual space, in my case the latter, I'll see you in Lisbon. A second plug is for the UN Decade of Ocean Science, which commences next year and presents a myriad of cooperation opportunities for ocean science and the business sector to collaboratively drive the innovation that will create the right solutions for the ocean's good health. I commend UN Global Compact's Action Platform for Sustainable Ocean Business for its progressive work in this field and for organizing today's virtual gathering. And I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very, very much, UN Secretary General Special Envoy for the Ocean, Peter Thomson, for those amazing closing remarks. And I can see that Sturla Henriksson is trying, no, still not. I completely agree with what you're saying. Ambition, innovation, and collaboration is going to be key for the blue-green recovery as such. I would now like to welcome all panelists back on screen so we can thank you for this excellent session. I apologize for some of the technical issues that we've had thus far. But I'm sure you will agree that part of the fun of these virtual conferences are part of our virtual reality that we're living in right now. So thank you all very much for participating today. It's been a great session. There you all are. Thank you very, very much for supporting the work of the Action Platform for Sustainable Ocean. And I wish you all a pleasant evening, morning, day. So thank you very much for joining and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.